The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
The Dave Hooker Show. A presentation of Off the Hook Sports. Objective insight, expertise, top guests. Available on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the Off the Hook Sports app. Download now for free. Also available on offthehooksports.com.
I compute and obey.
Now to Dave Hooker.
Ready.
All right, welcome to the program. He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. It is time to fight off the IFOs. The IFOs. Caleb, do you know what that means?
I do not. What are IFOs, Dave?
Okay, may I go Uncle Dave's story time for just a moment with you on the beginning of the program? Okay. Proof that Tennessee fans are taking over Ohio State. That's 4 downs coming up. Brought to you by our good friends at Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. Can the Vols overcome a talent gap with the Ohio State based on experience? And is it that significant of a talent gap? This day in Tennessee sports history, Brian Kelly is going to match $1 million in NIL collective funds. This is where a lot of that money is going to be going. So if you like your money and you're a head college coach, you better do everything you can. Be like Donald Duck in the tuxedo outfit and dance with it and do all that you can, because you're going to lose some of it, Caleb, because it's going to go to some of the players.
Oh, I'm sure it is. I'm sure it absolutely is. But wait, now you got me on the edge of my seat. What's the IFO Uncle Dave story?
Okay, I'm getting there. Does the pressure on Ryan Day help or hurt Ohio State, who has the quarterback advantage? Bank on it. Brought to you by Commercial Bank. It's the Vols. And also, the Vols, is their defensive line that good, or will they actually get exposed against Ohio State? John Adams will join us. We love visiting with John Adams. His appearance brought to you by Neubert Collision Center. Again, Neubert Collision Center. Let's go ahead and get to 4 downs right now. More proof that the University of Tennessee is taking over Columbus, Ohio. What?
4 downs. 4 questions. 4 answers. The Dave Hooker Show. 4 downs. A presentation of offthehooksports.com.
All right, Cooper Mays, you're the man. Tell us what to do to take part in 4 downs.
Cooper Mays here. Hit like and subscribe.
All right, what down, Coop?
Coop here. First down.
All right, first down is this as I kick it to Caleb Calhoun. More resale tickets on StubHub and SeatGeek have gone to Tennessee residents more than Ohio residents. What can you tell us about this breaking news, Caleb?
Yes, and this is from the Columbus Dispatch. Funny enough, they reported it. They reached out to SeatGeek and StubHub. And so StubHub reports that 42% of their resale tickets have gone to Tennessee residents and only 23% to Ohio residents. That's insane, honestly, for a game that's supposed to be in Ohio. It's a lot closer with SeatGeek. It's 37% to 34%. But guys, not only is this game in Ohio, but Ohio's a much bigger state population-wise than Tennessee. So just raw numbers, you would expect Ohio would pick up and scoop up more resale tickets. But no, Tennessee residents are scooping up more resale tickets. I have a hunch those Tennessee residents are Tennessee fans. Just my hunch.
Yeah, I'd say you're probably right on that. What down, Coop?
Cooper Mays here. Second down.
Okay. Bars in Ohio are reporting Tennessee fans are playing Rocky Top over other potential tunes. Breaking news, Caleb.
Yes, so this came out too. WBIR has reported this. Touch Tunes, which is the app now that you can play it when you go to bars to play music. There's a report that Rocky Top is being played disproportionately at bars across Ohio, particularly near Columbus, which obviously makes it clear that Tennessee fans have already invaded this state. I'm sure many people decided to take off work for the week just to go to Ohio to party it up. Now, I want to say, I don't know if this means there will be I don't know if this means this will be 25% Tennessee fans. I don't know if it means it'll be 30 or 40% Tennessee fans. I just know it's going to be more than the 3,500 tickets allotted for Tennessee.
No, agreed there. And I want to get into that number, though, because we're not going to step aside from it, because I think some people have talked about this number and then they just stepped aside. So I want to realistically look at what percentage of actual butts in seats? I mean, let's get excited if you want to, but let's also be semi-realistic. So what down is next, Cooper Mays?
Tennessee center Cooper Mays here. Third down.
All right, third down, Cooper, is this. Professional resellers report a huge drop in ticket prices down to under $200. How that makes the home crowd look like a very Rocky Top sort of crowd. On the program with Caleb Calhoun, I'm Dave Hooker, the show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. Why Banks & Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott Jones. Banks. If you read it real quick, it looks like professional wrestlers, but it's not. It's professional resellers report a huge drop in ticket prices. Caleb Calhoun down to under $200. What that tells me is that the fans that are close to Ohio State, close to Columbus, aren't as apt to go, which would again paint the backdrop that this could be a pro type of home crowd at Columbus. And I want to dive into what that would actually mean and how we would define that. So Caleb, do you want to go to fourth down now, or do you want to, what would define a pro home crowd for anybody that's going on the road to a Power 4? Do we want to get into that first or fourth down?
Yeah. Let me
fourth down?
No. Let me break down this drop in prices because there's more to the story. What it's saying is there's a higher supply of Ohio State tickets to these games on StubHub than other college football playoff games, and that would suggest that many Ohio State fans just don't want to go to the game because, as Dylan points out, it's cheaper to go to this game than it was to go to the Tennessee-Kentucky game earlier this season in the regular season.
Ouch.
That's crazy. That's insane, guys. And look, we'll talk about this on fourth down, but the truth of the matter is Ohio State fans are really down on Ryan Day. They're really down on the program. And they seem to I've covered one team like this, but never in a playoff. Dave, you've covered some teams that I'm sure that were bad and they wanted to keep losing just to get everybody fired. Have you ever covered a team in a playoff that wanted to do that though?
No, of course not. No, that's bizarre. Not even close. Not even a team that needed Florida to lose 2 SEC games in order to get back in the race for an SEC championship game. And that was about as far-fetched as you could imagine at the time. And that happened for Tennessee. And no, Caleb, I mean, when you still have a chance to win everything, when that door's officially shut, I get it. I get the not taking part and opting out. You got to look out for your family and your family tree. And I get all that. But when you've still got potentially a championship to play for, you shouldn't be shopping yourself, and you shouldn't be
rooting to lose.
Yes, rooting for your team to lose. You're nowhere close to that point. And I don't know that it really helps you at all, Caleb, to be honest with you. I mean, you could have argued that Tennessee, why did they part ways with Philip Fulmer early? I'm sure you know why, but I'll just ask.
I mean, because the program had gotten totally stale and the offense was so bad in 2008 and it was 2 losing seasons in 4 years and the boosters totally turned. Basically, the boosters were like, we want him gone.
Right. But the reason they did it during the season, which you probably wouldn't have done in a perfect world, right?
Right.
Because he's a legendary coach, is because Lane Kiffin, completely tricked Tennessee in the fact that he said Washington had offered, which they had, and that he was going to take that, which is very questionable, and that he had a hard out on that, and he only had so much time. So that pushed Tennessee's hand, and that's why Lane Kiffin accepted the job as quickly as he did, and there was a move made in the middle of the season. But Caleb, you still have a championship to play for. For anybody to suggest that Ohio State should lose this game for the betterment of the program is a head scratcher to me. You win one more game, you're in the final 8 of the country. You win two more games, you're in the Final Four.
Not only that, Ohio State, think about this. They get Tennessee at home this week. They're favored. Then they would play Oregon in the Rose Bowl. They lost to Oregon by 1 on the road. They have every chance in the world to beat Oregon in 2 weeks. And then they're immediately in the college football playoff. I'm with you. The only possibility I could think of, Colton brings it up, maybe some Ohio State fans are overlooking Tennessee and they've just gone ahead and decided to buy Rose Bowl tickets.
No, it's definitely the other from people I talked to up there. If it's anything, it's not overconfidence that you're going to save that trip. Because I understand some people are going to save this kind of as a bowl trip, and we'll see what economic impacts that has down the road, Caleb, but you're not going to save it if you're in Columbus. You're just going to go to that game. You already have a ticket, so you're going to go to that game, and then what are you going to do if you have the money to travel to that would be that would be quarterfinal, right? You would make that trip.
it would be the quarterfinal in the Rose Bowl. Yeah.
Okay, here's another thought, and I believe it is Ryan Day and the fact that they don't want him. I believe there's a real tangible backlash to that. But let me just offer this up as a thought. What if a lot of fans use the HD excuse? They live in Columbus, but they're like, these guys from Tennessee, I heard all about their offense. I watched them a couple of times. Didn't do much for me. It's going to be cold. You know how they make those seats smaller and smaller, and I get bigger and bigger because I'm sure they have the same jokes up there that they do in Knoxville, right, Caleb?
Yeah, I'm sure.
So I'll just stay at home and watch it. That way I can make the trip to whatever the bowl may be.
Rose Bowl. It'd be the Rose Bowl. It'd be Pasadena anyway.
Yeah, because I want to go to the Rose Bowl and I want to take this game off. Maybe it undermines the home team across the board.
Well, okay, so Ohio State's a little bit different from like the upper Midwest. And for those who don't know, and Dave, you know this, there's two types of Midwest. There's lower Midwest, which is like kind of like you go straight up I-75 from Tennessee, you're kind of in there. Cincinnati, right? And Cincinnati, where Larry Bird is from in Indiana, that's like lower Midwest. That's not the same as the upper Midwest where, I don't know where Columbus falls because it's right in the middle of Ohio. Because in the upper Midwest, they wouldn't think that way. In the upper Midwest, they'd be like, 17 degrees, let's get hammered. I'm ready to go, baby, because they love that weather up there. Cincinnati and Southern Indiana, though, they don't really love that weather like that. Or Southern Illinois, they don't love that type of weather. I don't know where Columbus falls on that trajectory. But, I mean, before we get to fourth down, I just have to point out that I think that Ohio State, I still think they would take – look, they have screamed for years, if the SEC just came and played the Big Ten and Big Ten country, they wouldn't know what to do because they couldn't handle the weather. You got your shot. You've got an SEC team coming to Big Ten country. Literally
is reason enough to call for regulation of the YouTube channels in general. That voice is hands down. What down is it, Coop?
All SEC center Cooper Mays here. Fourth down.
Public figures comments. Ross Bjork. I loved him on Star Trek. And Kirk Herbstreit saying OSU needs to be better. No. He's saying, sorry.
Ross Bjork was asking fans to not settle Tennessee. We talked about that yesterday. But Kirk Herbstreit came out and said OSU might actually have been better playing on the road than at home. What he says is the minute things go wrong for Ohio State at home, not only would the Tennessee fans cheer, but the Ohio State fans would just start booing the team in a heartbeat. And
I can't believe this is a thing. I really can't.
I know, right? It's the first playoff game ever, and you're playing it at home.
Yeah, I mean, you have a chance to win every single thing you talked about in February, except for the Big Ten championship, which is pretty much meaningless, right?
Yeah, or beat Michigan, and they take pride in beating Michigan. But
sure they do.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't understand I don't think Tennessee fans would ever feel this way. Tennessee could lose to Florida, Georgia, and Alabama in the same year. If they're playing for a national championship, that still outweighs that, doesn't it?
Yes.
Yes. Your goal is championships.
Yes.
It's I know in the 90s the Cowboys and Packers had a big rivalry, right? During that time.
Well, fortunately they had Brett Favre, so it wasn't that big of a rivalry.
Yeah, well, there was one year, the year the Packers won the Super Bowl, they lost to the Cowboys. I don't think the Packers cared. They won the Super Bowl.
No, I agree. And I used to think that I remember people used to say in the 90s and early 2000s, well, you didn't beat Florida, so it doesn't really matter. What does that mean? What does it matter?
He won an SEC title in 97.
Yeah,
Peyton
I mean,
Manning, yeah.
I know. What does that matter? Well, I think some people think of that as a hollow title, don't you?
I don't. I think the SEC title actually mattered back then. And so, but look, I mean, it's funny. The 2001 team beat Florida, lost the SEC title. The 97 team lost to Florida, won the SEC title. Everybody's taking the 97 team. Everybody is taking the 97 team over the 2001 team.
All right. The Vols, do they have to overcome a talent gap? I'm not so sure they do. Off the Hook Sports show presented in part by our good friends at Dynasty Pools and Spas.
Commercial Bank is your neighborhood bank.
That's right, Dynasty Pools and Spas. Dave Hooker here for Dynasty Pools and Spas, your home for the best spas and everything you need to jump right in. Relaxing, therapeutic, absolutely. But what sets Dynasty Pools and Spas apart from others is that you get everything with any spa purchase. You get the cover lift, the steps, delivery, and chemicals. When Dynasty Pools and Spas delivers your spa from their Athens location within 125 miles, you'll get your own personal hydrotherapy spa. Mention me, Dave Hooker, or Off the Hook Sports, and get $500 off your top quality new spa. Dynasty Pools and Spas, just off the Athens exit. Drop in and receive a free gift from Off the Hook Sports, Dynasty Pools and Spas. Mention Off the Hook Sports for a drop-in prize and that $500 discount, Dynasty Pools and Spas. To check out some of the Dynasty Spa models and to buy spa chemicals, go to dynastypoolsandspas.com. Dynasty Pools and Spas.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
Who's this guy?
Hello, wizard.
The Dave Hooker Show,
Who?
a presentation of Off the Hook Sports,
What?
YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. Back to Dave Hooker.
We try to be clever, but I don't even want to do that anymore. I just want to strip it down to its bones, Caleb, if you don't mind. And I think that this talk about Ryan Day and how that could actually help Tennessee is just befuddling and bizarre because a championship is still out there to be won. And Caleb and I, not to put words in your mouth, stop me if I do, and they're incorrect, but Caleb and I think that to not want to play and play hard, or not want to cheer and cheer hard, or coach and coach hard because of possible changes in the future when you're still at a championship contending level, arguable, is a little bit silly. And you should go out there and enjoy the game. It's at home. You're competing for a championship. Cheer hard, play hard. What the hell is wrong with you people? So how would we strip that down, Caleb, as far as a poll question?
Let's see. If you were an Ohio State fan, here, I'll set this up. I got it. If you were an Ohio State fan, you would, here, I'll say it this way. If I were an Ohio State fan, I would be excited about CFP matchup, want to lose to get Ryan Day fired.
There you go. Pretty good.
There we go. All right.
Open for Urban. I was told by somebody, by the way, at Ohio State, very good ties, that Urban Meyer has been told at least 10 times that he's never going to get the Ohio State job again.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I don't think that's going to happen. I think that's the way he would like to see it shake down, but I don't think that's going to happen. Today's tough question is right now, and it's brought to you by Medicare Misty. No charge to you. Medicare Misty takes care of all your Social Security needs.
Today's tough question. Take a side. Take a stand. The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of offthehooksports.com.
All right, can Tennessee overcome a talent gap with Ohio State based on their recent experience? Now, that important part is the very end of that, because we're going to say based on their experience. This is where Caleb and I can differ at times. I can watch two football teams and have a strong opinion about the talent level. When I walk away, that may not be upheld by any sort of recruiting ranking or any sort of thing headed into it. I can be an eyeballs guy. I can be an eyeball test guy. So I can get myself in trouble that way too. Caleb. Whereas when we talk about this Ohio State program, you say based on experience that the Vols have a significant talent gap. Why do you say that?
Yes, and this is where the talent gap versus morale, culture, and experience are going to weigh against each other. Ohio State, if you go back to the 247 Sports 2024 college football team talent composite, they basically just ranked the teams based on the number of 5 stars, 4 stars, 3 stars, 2 stars, 1 stars, whatever they have on the team. Ohio State's number 3, just behind Alabama and Georgia. And actually, if you really look at it, they're right on Georgia's level. They were only slightly behind Alabama, which is funny because Alabama didn't make the college football playoff. Tennessee, though, is all the way down at number 17. So on paper, Tennessee has a significant talent disadvantage facing Ohio State, and they are visiting Ohio State. Now, there's some good news. I just told you guys Alabama's number 1. They didn't even make the playoff. Clemson's number 5. They only made the playoff by default. They didn't really belong. Oklahoma's number 7. They finished 6-6, I think, 7-5. They didn't make the playoff. LSU's number 8. They didn't make the playoff. They were underachievers. Texas A&M's number 10. They were 8-4. Florida's number 12, and they celebrated finishing 7-5. Florida State's number 13. They went, 1-11, 2-10 on the year. Miami's number 14. They missed the playoff. USC's number 15. They went 7-5. Michigan's number 16. They went 7-5. So this obviously isn't the best indicator of who's in the playoff. However, if you look at it, Georgia, Ohio State, Texas, Clemson, Oregon, and Notre Dame and Penn State all made the playoff. That's 7 of the 12 teams ahead of Tennessee. 7 of the 12 teams in the playoff were ahead of Tennessee. Tennessee's obviously number 8. SMU got in. Again, I think that was a little bit by default. Arizona State got an auto bid. So those 2 teams got in, and then Boise State. But look, Tennessee, as far as at-large bids, which, when you talk about talent, at-large bids kind of focus on talent a little bit more than anything else. Tennessee, I believe, on the 247 Sports talent composite gap is the second worst team, only to SMU of the 7 at-large teams to make the college football playoff. You guys can correct me if there's another team I missed on there, but those are the 2. I think those are the 2 bottom teams based on what I'm looking at right now.
Okay, bank on it. There is not a substantial difference in talent between Tennessee and Ohio State, and I'll tell you why. I brought to you by Commercial Bank, member FDIC, life made better.
Commercial Bank is your neighborhood bank. What makes us different from other banks? We understand that every customer has unique opportunities, challenges, and financial concerns. We don't expect you to fit into the same box as the next person or business. Whether it's purchasing a home, saving for your child's future, or planning for your next vacation, we're with you every step of the way to navigate life's big decisions. Commercial Bank.
Caleb, I think Josh Heupel would have been a very good to great coach, even without the NIL and transfer portal twist, which we didn't know about. And it turned out to play to his strengths, which is kinsmanship and culture and all that sort of thing. Worked out well. I think he would have been a great coach without that, but I think those have played into his favor. So I'm not sure exactly how we rate an incoming class. For instance, how does Jermod McCoy rate with this class that Tennessee just had? He was a high 3, low 4-star guy. As it turns out, he's a 5-star guy. So I don't know how you adjust the rankings, but when I just watch eyeball test, I don't think there's a substantial difference between the top team in the country and about the top 7 or 8. And I think Tennessee's right on that 8.
So the one question that comes, though, and I'll say this, you were off one week and John was on and we kind of talked, and I think Jermod McCoy is good. I think Ricky Gibson Jr. is good. Ricky Gibson III is good too. We have questioned the level of talent Tennessee has faced offensively this year. And so while Tennessee does look like they have a bunch of, I don't want to say overachievers, but players that were underrated coming out of high school on their team, you have to question, is it because they haven't been tested? Because, look, Ohio State, I mean, you can do the whole SEC versus Big Ten thing, but Ohio State has been tested more than Tennessee. They just played more elite teams than Tennessee has.
Yeah, but I'm to the point now where you are what you are. And if we haven't figured that out by now, we're not going to. So I think you just have to take it when you're 12 games, 13 games deep. You just have to take it. So this is, you can factor in Kent State all you want. You can factor in what North Carolina State was all you want, but I just, you're 12 games deep.
You think it's pretty clear at this point that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty clear too. There's not an elite program this year in college football. I think there's a lot of years where the Miami's led by Ken Dorsey's, where the Nebraskas, where a lot of those teams would have destroyed anybody out there this year. Do you disagree with that?
Let's be honest. Ken Dorsey was not the reason that Miami team was loaded.
I know. He's just
you and I could have won a national title with that team.
He's a figurehead because of that bobblehead neck he's got going on.
Sidebar: do you think Tennessee would have even stood a chance against that Miami team if they won the SEC title in 2001?
Yeah, because they could run the football. I always thought they had a chance. And
they had a good interior. I thought so too, and I thought they were better coached, more disciplined too. But yeah, I'm with you on that. They weren't more talented, but they did have a decent match. Look, I think Tennessee does have some. I do think the level of parity helps a lot now. And it's funny because I was listening to Cole Kublik and Josh Pate talk about it. And honestly, I disagree with them. I'd love to have Josh Pate on to debate this, but they don't believe in auto bids the way the NFL does it because they say teams are just on such different tiers from different conferences. But I think you and I are like, that's not really the case anymore, is it? They're like, yes, the SEC is the toughest conference and the Big Ten is the toughest conference. But like in terms of talent gaps, because of the transfer portal, you're much closer to the NFL now with all 12 playoff teams, aren't you?
To me, there are three levels right now. There's the SEC, and Lane Kiffin threw this out there. There's Lane Kiffin. I'm sorry. There's the SEC, about 4 teams from the Big Ten, and about 4 teams from the rest of the Power 4 conferences. And then there's another level, drops down. And then, in my opinion, there's another level down below that, the North Carolina states. To me, there are 4 right now very clear levels of college football in what is supposed to be the bowl championship series, or still supposed to be technically the bowl BCS. Caleb, I think how many do you see? 2, 3?
See, I see 3 tiers, but I feel like in certain tiers, there could be good teams that compete with the lower teams in the other tiers. Like, I think, like, for instance, like, we're now at a level where, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but we're now at a level where, like, Boise State, who just won the Mountain West, on a good day, might put up a scare against an SEC team, an elite SEC team. I think, which that wouldn't have been the case in a college football playoff setting 10 years ago. With that in mind, I think Tennessee's much closer to Ohio State's level. And I think the difference in these type of games between Tennessee and Ohio State, and Dave, you've covered the NFL playoffs before. Can I say this? The mentality becomes more important than actual talent in the playoffs, right? Because NFL playoff teams are so evenly matched. Your mental makeup.
Very true. It's very true. Those Ravens Titans games I covered, the Ravens walked into that game knowing they were going to win. The Titans kind of hoped maybe they'd win.
Yeah, and Eddie George was scared to death of getting touched by Ray Lewis.
Yeah, fingers crossed. No, I definitely remember that game and several of those games. But
Tennessee has the mentality advantage, by the way.
Yeah, it's interesting to me that going back to the original concept, when you hire Josh Heupel, you're hiring him in part because of the offensive approach, right? Let's face it. I mean, Danny White can crow about offense and he can talk about dig routes and all that stuff, but we know ultimately the offense is coming from Josh Heupel. The offense is coming from the coaches. We all know that, right? So if you would have told Danny White in 2021 that, hey, that guy that you hired, really, he's not going to have nearly the impact on offense, which is why you hired him, because all these coaches talk now, and that impact is only going to last 1 year, about 2022, and that's the only big, huge impact you're going to get off the wonderkin offensive genius. Danny White would have been sick. He would have been like, who did I just hire? But in retrospect, you look at it, and it's even a better hire because of the culture that Tennessee is able to build and will be more bountiful long-term. I believe that no matter what happens Saturday in Columbus, Caleb.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think that's the thing. We knew Josh Heupel had a good offensive system. We didn't realize how good of a culture he had actually developed at Tennessee, and players want to play for him. And it's funny because, like, I think he came close to losing the team a couple of times. I've told you, I thought he actually lost the team for a minute when he picked Joe Milton to start over Hendon Hooker in 2021. You've told me, some people I've talked to have told me that, like, the team wanted Hendon Hooker. from the start as the starter. So picking Joe Milton really upset a lot of them. But so to win them so put it this way, to win them back after something like that really speaks to how Josh Heupel runs a solid program. And I think Josh Heupel, it's weird. All coaches are typically former players, but Dave, tell me if I'm right on this. Former coaching as a guy who played in the 60s, coaching players playing in the 90s, doesn't seem like he related as well to his players as Josh Heupel as a former player relates to his players. It seems like there's less of a generational gap between coaches and players now. I
disagree. I think it's very similar.
Really?
Yeah.
Former seemed like so I don't know. He seemed like he had opposite interests of the players in the 90s.
I can remember him saying to Eric Ainge, I can remember him say it was an off week, and he said, Vicky's out and gone. I'm batching it this weekend. Like, being a bachelor, they weren't, doing anything crazy. He said, come on by. Yeah. No, he really got along with his players.
Do you think, okay, how about this? Do you think Philip Fulmer knew the rap artist his players were listening to?
Probably not.
I bet Josh Heupel knows the ones his players are listening to.
I don't think so.
You don't think so? I bet he does.
Okay. We'll work on that. We've got a long week that we'll get to that before the end of the week. How about that?
Okay. All right. Sounds good. Yeah, that's the question. Do you think Josh Heupel knows? Because we know Josh Heupel listened to rap because he came out in 2000. He was a college kid in 2000. He was probably listening to it at that time. So I'm guessing he knows the ones that his players are listening to.
This day in Tennessee sports history brought to you by Medicare Misty.
I've been in business actually 19 years this year. I've been in the community since 1993. You're getting a lot of information. Unlike when you were working, they made the choice for you. Now you have to make the choice. Come to us and let us help you make it easy. Call Medicare Misty, MedicareMisty.com or 423-777-5577. Let us help them sleep at night.
And we call her Medicare Misty.
Hey, before we get to this day in Tennessee sports history, let me ask you this. How many programs, to wrap up this topic, do you think right now have the talent that you have to win a national championship?
Dave, I used to say only like 5 to 10. I think, honestly, 30. I think 30 programs have the talent. I think a lot of it comes down to culture, chemistry, and coaching now, more than it does actual just raw talent. And I mean, I've come to believe that a lot more. I mean, like I said, yeah, it's the mentality in the NFL. In the NFL playoffs, the better mentality typically wins the games now more than the actual better team because they're so evenly matched. The better mentality and the better coaching, honestly, wins, which, that's the other time my Titans lost. We lost to the Bengals a couple years ago because Todd Downing couldn't coach worth a lick. And by the way, did you guys see Will Levis the other night? 8 of 12 with he had 4 incompletions, 3 were interceptions.
May I offer something up for those of you that would like a little entertainment on the Sunday with the NFL going on? Even if you're not on the Twitter, I would suggest that you follow Caleb Calhoun, who doesn't tweet as often as I think he should, and then explodes when the Titans inevitably explode each and every Sunday at a stadium near you. So that's worth the price of admission of having a cell phone.
My rage tweets, I should just sell them and put them in a museum on Sunday. Just like, I should just be famous for my rage tweets about the Titans.
Yes. No, they're good rage tweets.
By the way, Steve Sullivan, when you say Ryan Date's an NSYNC fan, don't diss NSYNC, okay? NSYNC was great.
That's not true. And that is not endorsed by anybody at Off the Hook Sports. Coming up, John Adams will join us from the Knoxville News Sentinel. Do the Vols have a coaching advantage? Does pressure on Ryan Day actually help or hurt Ohio State? Stat of the day as well. Brian Kelly is going to dole out $1 million in NIL collective funds. Why this is a sign that LSU is going to fire him. Stay tuned. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com.
I've been in business actually 19 years this year. I've been in the community since 1993. You're getting a lot of information. Unlike when you were working, they made the choice for you. Now you have to make the choice. Come to us and let us help you make it easy. Call Medicare Misty, MedicareMisty.com or 423-777-5577. Let us help them sleep at night.
And we call her Medicare Misty.
Now in its 45th year, The second and third generations continue Joe Neubert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Neubert Collision Center.
Why Banks & Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott Jones. BanksandJones.com. Dave Hooker here for Dynasty Pools and Spas. Your home for the best spas and everything you need to jump right in. Relaxing? Therapeutic? Absolutely. But what sets Dynasty Pools and Spas apart from others is that you get everything with any spa purchase. You get the cover lift, the steps, delivery, and chemicals. When Dynasty Pools and Spas delivers your spa from their Athens location within 125 miles, you'll get your own personal hydrotherapy spa. Mention me, Dave Hooker, or Off the Hook Sports, and get $500 off your top quality new spa. Dynasty Pools and Spas, just off the Athens exit. Drop in and receive a free gift from Off the Hook Sports, Dynasty Pools and Spas. Mention Off the Hook Sports for a drop-in prize and that $500 discount, Dynasty Pools and Spas. To check out some of the Dynasty Spa models and to buy spa chemicals, go to dynastypoolsandspas.com. Dynasty Pools and Spas.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, BanksJones.com.
Who's this guy?
Hello, wizard.
The Dave Hooker Show,
Who?
a presentation of Off the Hook Sports,
What?
YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. Back to Dave Hooker.
Perhaps the zaniest take of the week or angle that some reporters decided to go with is, man, that weather's a lot different in Columbus than Knoxville. Let's break that down.
Does nobody study geography?
I mean, they're practically like the same town. I know a guy who's lived in both.
It's a similar climate.
Yeah.
Like it's it'd be one thing if you're talking like Alabama versus Michigan. You know what I mean? But like Tennessee versus Columbus, hey, what? We're talking about a 5-hour drive at most.
Yeah. The UPS store, Hardin Valley, helping individuals and small businesses, wide range of products and services, locally owned and operated. The link is right down below. UPS store, Hardin Valley, UPS store, Hardin Valley. Also, thanks to Sports Treasures, carrying over 5 million sports treasures and so much more. Follow on Facebook for the best sports memorabilia, daily updates. Sports Treasures TN, right down below, sportstreasurestn.com. Caleb Calhoun, are we doing this day in Tennessee sports history or stat of the day? What do we got?
We got this day in Tennessee sports history, and it's actually another bowl win over Maryland. In case you guys don't know, Tennessee and Maryland had a long bowl rivalry for a little while.
Did not know that.
Oh yeah. Funny enough, Tennessee in their 51 national title year played Maryland in the Sugar Bowl, lost, but it doesn't matter because they did the rankings before the bowl games that year during that time anyway. In 1983, on this day in 1983, 41 years ago, Tennessee beat Maryland in the Citrus Bowl, 30-23. It was to close out a 9-3 campaign. This was Reggie White's senior year, Reggie White's All-American year. And if Tennessee had, it's funny because they started the year with 2 losses to Pittsburgh and Auburn, and then had a fluke loss to Ole Miss late. But if you really looked at how the team came together late, Johnny Majors even said that he felt that had the team been what they were at the end of the year, at the beginning of the year, they actually had a national title caliber team that year.
Yeah, and he told a lot of people that, but wouldn't he want to say that? Maybe have an orchestrated answer for questions like that, perhaps?
Probably, and he was still trying to sell Tennessee because, as you remember, Dave, Majors is hired in 77, and from 77 to 84, Tennessee misses a bowl game 3 times, has 2 losing seasons, fails to finish in the top 25 1 time, and doesn't win any conference championships. And many people, I'm sure you've heard the stories of painting the rock. We made a major mistake in the early 80s. And Majors, he got a lot of goodwill for 2 reasons. The facilities and the program was so behind, and he was trying to build it up. And also because he was beloved because he played at Tennessee. But honestly, if he wasn't beloved the way he was, he'd have been canned, by his fourth year at Tennessee.
It was so weird for him. I guess tragedy is too strong of a word because he won a national championship. He won a Heisman Trophy. He did everything that you could do in coaching.
Second in the Heisman. Second in the Heisman. Didn't win.
Tony Dorsett didn't win it?
Oh, you mean he coached a Heisman winner?
Yeah.
Okay, I thought you were talking about him as a player.
Okay, so he did about everything you could want. I was talking specifically as a coach, but he's just short of making the minimum, correct me if I'm wrong, of making the college football Hall of Fame. He was just short of winning the Heisman Trophy. He was just short of turning things around. Do we remember Johnny Majors as a tragic figure or a celebrated figure? Because I kind of think of him as a guy that back in the day, if you're winning 9 or 10 games on an 11-game schedule, that's an 85 celebrated trip to see the Sugar Bowls. That's a big deal. So I kind of view him as that, but I was a younger guy. I was in my early teens during the best years of his coaching career. So maybe I see it wrong.
He made the college football playoff. I'm not the college football playoff. Listen to me. The College Football Hall of Fame as a player in 1987. So he is in the Hall of Fame, just not as a coach.
Right.
But you are right. It's and particularly at Tennessee, there was about 2 or 3 years there where every one of his losses came down to the last second, like that 1990 team, the one that was loaded with Alvin Harper, Carl Pickens and Alvin Harper are 2 receivers. It's like insane to think about looking back. And your offensive line has Charles McRae and Anton Davis and like 3 first-rounders. That team literally, I think of the 90 team, that team was literally built like the college version of the Super Bowl Cowboys, right? Just loaded with talent.
There's a reason why that is. We don't have time to get into it, but they were built by Larry Lacewell. I'm sure you know who that is.
Yep, the defensive line coach that was so good.
He was in large part tasked with helping put the Cowboys back together. So anyway, go ahead. I got you sidetracked.
Yeah, no, it's fine. Yeah, and so they had the exact same offense that they ran at the Cowboys, which was very simplistic, use the weapons, and then they had the 4-3 down alignment defense where they relied more on athleticism on defense than most schools did at that time. And they lost 4 games, they tied 2 games and lost 2 games in 1990. Chuck Webb forgot to get out of bounds as time expired against Colorado. They could have kicked a game-winning field goal. They blew a 26-9 lead at Auburn after Chuck Webb went down with season-ending injury. There was that blocked field goal against Alabama that went all the way the other way that led to an Alabama field goal to win 9-6. And then Andy Kelly throws an interception late as Tennessee's driving to beat Notre Dame. Tennessee easily could have finished that year 13-0.
Yep, you're absolutely right. And that team was loaded. If for those that either went to the Miracle at South Bend or watched the previous year when Tennessee, as you mentioned, almost flip-flopped that score and came back, not as big of a comeback as the Miracle at South Bend ended up being, but Caleb, Tennessee almost came back, if not for that pass by Andy Kelly that had been just flat. I still say if you went to a lot of college football games and you were in the stadium on that particular day, which I happened to be in the fans sitting with my dad, and if you say you were there, you were in the room with one of the greatest collections of, except for the NFL draft combine and pro days, one of the greatest select groups of talented college football players in the history of mankind.
It was, and they talked about that. Tickets were never at more of a premium in 1990 than they were for that Tennessee Notre Dame game. Scouts were paying top dollar to get there, and apparently scalpers turned a greater percentage profit on those tickets than they some people would have estimated. It's hard to track this, but that's one of the top 3 games of all time in which scalpers turned a profit. In terms of scalpers profit.
I'm sure they did. It was ridiculously exciting. And you're talking about, this is during college football days, okay? I'm not counting what he did in the NFL, but Caleb, during his college days, Rocket comes into the game as probably the 5th best skill position player. A guy named Rocket comes in as the 5th best skill position player.
Yeah, it was wild. And then they had Ricky Waters, Jerome Bettis. And obviously Tennessee, I just named their team. That game was just loaded with talent everywhere.
Yep. I'm not going to ask you where you were because you were probably a lot younger than me when you saw that game. So I was
probably getting my diaper changed. I was 2.
Show brought to you in part by our friends at Double D Piping.
Double D Piping provides full-service fire protection on any scale. From residential homes to government facilities, we can assist any customer through design, fabrication, installation, inspection, and demonstration of fire suppression systems. With 30 years of service across 5 states and a full staff with over 40 years experience, our quality can't be beaten. Don't get caught watching what you could have prevented. Call Double D Piping, the absolute best.
All right, Caleb, get us into this next topic because I'm just going to disdain from it. Is that what? Or no, what do you do when you refuse to vote? Abstain.
Abstain, yes.
I'm abstaining. I'm not disdaining. That means I'm really not liking the vote. I'm abstaining for this because I think the parameters are unfair. Motion made, Caleb Calhoun.
Well, Brian Kelly has come out and said that he will match.
Come out and said what?
That, I was going to tell you.
Okay, go ahead.
Brian Kelly has come out and said that he is going to match. He and his wife, Packy, are starting the Kelly Family $1 Million Match Challenge. They will match contributions up to $1 million to the Football NIL Fund through LSU's collective Bayou Traditions through February the 5th. This is basically Brian Kelly saying, I'm going to take some of my money and use it to go buy some players.
That's exactly what it is. It's basically one part of your business saying, hands in the sky, we can't get the job done. Somebody else take over some of this stuff because we can't get it done. It's exactly what it is. And Brian Kelly is telling you what you should have known already. And I would have told you that coaches found an awesome little loophole, an awesome little area, a power vortex, if you may, to go and coach at a semi-high to high level and make tens of millions of dollars because everybody's looking for the next great offensive wonderkind. That's where they are right now. And Caleb, you're going to see a lot of these coaching prices where somebody just says, hey, I was mentioned in a discussion about a national championship one day a few years ago, so I need $10 million a year. Those days are over. I hope you got your money, but those days are over, and they need it. More of it needs to go to the players.
I agree. And here's my question. Do you think LSU forced Brian Kelly to do this? Do you think they went to Brian Kelly and they're like, look, we need you to put up some of your own money. We've paid you a good bit.
Absolutely. This is the same thing as, that offensive coordinator isn't really getting the job done. Or in the NFL, that quarterback isn't really getting the job done. This is your warning. This is the new warning. It's the same thing as getting rid of assistant coaches, changing up coordinators, whatever. Now, giving to the NIL fund is the same thing as the dreaded press conference of support.
What did I tell you was going to happen in football, Dave? I said this about just a month ago. I said a Moneyball era was coming to college football, which was that I said there would be I didn't know the school that would do it. And LSU is like doing it in a workaround, but this is where college football's headed. There's going to be the school that realizes I don't really need that good of a coach. I can get a coach on the cheap and then use the rest of the money to buy talent. And then I'll have more talent than anybody. Because what they're going to do is they're going to look at the recruiting rankings of the last 25 years, and they're going to say, you know what? Doesn't really matter who the coach is. It just matters who had the most talent. And they're going to say, you know what? Why don't I just promote old Joe Schmo to head coach? Give him about, $1 million a year maybe, and then use the other $9 million that was set aside for his coaching and go buy the best team possible. Okay. Guys, that's going to come to college football.
Here's what you don't do. You don't buy the best team possible because On 3 says Joe Green is worth $20 million a year. You buy it because your own talent evaluator with you, their own eyeballs, they look at Joe Green and they say, I think he's about a 4.5 star in our mindset. Go ahead and go get him. And then he may end up peaking at that, or go get that 3-star that is easier to get, that's asking less for NIL. I think talent evaluation is where that ultimate squeaky wheel gets the grease. You've got to hit on those. You can't miss on as many offensive linemen as Tennessee has, arguably receivers as well. Caleb, I think that's where the squeaky wheel gets the grease.
Dave, the first school that does this will have their pick of the litter of any player they want. When you have the pick of the litter, as Nick Saban did when he was at Alabama, as Kirby Smart does at Georgia, you and I both know this. Talent evaluation gets real easy. I've said for a while, the top talent, the top guys, you don't have to have an eye to know that they're good. It takes, my wife could look at them and be like, that guy can play football right there. I mean, honestly, it's not hard. You said that your kids aren't big football fans, right?
No, I kind of lost them a little bit.
I bet if you showed them videos of Derrick Henry in high school, they'd be like, oh, I bet he could play football. I don't think they'd have to look that hard. This is what the top guys are going to do. You're a Yankee fan. Dave, do the Yankees have to evaluate talent to go win a World Series? Or do they just have to make sure they buy guys?
No, I think there's a finite amount of money, so I think they have to be right on those middle guys that they decide on to go after or not. So I think Tennessee has to be right on those middle guys. You don't want to waste a bunch of time helping a guy be a contributor to your program and he transfers after a year, right?
No, but what I'm saying is I think that I think they'll be able to load up on the top guys as their middle guys. Some school's going to be able to do it. I know you say, people with the transfer portal, people will look to play sometimes over NIL. There's going to be a school that hires a big time program that hires a coach on the cheap that says, you know what, we'll get our coach on the cheap. And then we'll use all this money to outbid every other school in college football on these top tier players. I mean, if a $10 million difference between schools is a huge advantage, and I'm talking you can get a $10 million difference. I think this is what LSU's doing is the start of that, because again, we've kind of figured out that LSU was a little bit behind the NIL curve. They're ahead of the coaching curve, behind the NIL curve as an athletic department. And I think they've kind of realized that. So I think they're forcing Brian Kelly to do this. I'm just shocked that they're basically saying, Brian Kelly, you got to pay these players yourself. I mean, back in the day, shady business dealings, I don't ever remember a coach coming out of his own pocket to buy a player. Do you, when they were cheating?
I mean, I don't know. Where does some of that money come from? I can't tell you that some of them. I always wondered why they didn't pay themselves when they started getting over $2 million a year. I was like, well, that could change your football team. Why don't you just reinvest $500,000 of that, 25% of your income?
That's true. You still have 1.5 million. You still got plenty of money to do whatever the heck you
want.
want.
Aside from the morality of the NCAA.
Well, and this is what's crazy about how times have changed. Brian Kelly's literally opening up a way to bribe players. Remember Mark Richt got in trouble because he took money out of his own pocket just to pay his assistants a little bit more about 10 years ago?
I didn't remember him getting in trouble. I remember the
Georgia got penalized for that. They actually got like secondary violations. How stupid is that? He's like, these are my assistants. I can't pay them a little bit more just for myself. Yeah, no, he got in a little bit of trouble for that. Brian Kelly someone just said Jerry Pro. Brian Kelly should just troll. Brian Kelly should be like, I'm going to set up McDonald's bags, okay? And it's going to be for the players to come and take the cash they want.
I'm pretty sure that's what he's doing, Caleb. So laugh it off there, funny boy, because if you watch any of the Cowboys games, you gotta wonder what they're doing.
Well, Jerry Jones has been giving players money in basically McDonald's bags for 20 years, and they've never delivered for him.
Well, nice. All right, getting back to my original question, and let me ask you this: how many programs right now, as of December 17th or December the 18th, or whenever you're watching this, have enough talent to win a championship? Just raw talent, brought to you in part by our good friends at Work Trucks. All about trucks, right truck, right place, right time. WorkTrucksLLC.com. Go to WorkTrucksLLC.com. When you've got to find the right work trucks. It's all about trucks. Trucks are actually available. Trucks that help you maximize your profits by having the right work vehicle now. Time is money. The perfect work vehicle doesn't break down, has all the space to carry what you need. That's what Work Trucks is intending on offering, while other dealerships just can't do that. Contracting is about time. Work Trucks saves you time with less back and forth trips and trucks that pass the highest standards to be put to work. The process quick and easy when choosing a vehicle for Work Trucks. Cargo vans, utility body trucks with an app-hide work bodies installed. Pickup trucks of all sizes, anything special like cranes or dump trucks. Work Trucks supplies vehicles to people just like you and get you back on the road tomorrow. No dealership runaround. If you're a contractor, you need Work Trucks. WorkTrucksLLC.com, downtown Birmingham, and Clinton Highway in Knoxville. Proud supporters of the Vols. How many college football programs have enough talent to win a national championship right now, Caleb Calhoun?
Oh, I still say 30. because there's so much parity. I say 30 because it does come down to coaching and chemistry. And so I'm getting a comment on the message board saying they don't think I get it because coaches these days need to exude leadership, manage the assistants, cater to the big boosters and all of that. And random cheap coaches can't do that. I get your point, Sam Kim, but
the coach you just described is Lane Kiffin, and he's doing quite well in this environment.
Right. And what I would say is that it does matter. You are right, Sam, typically with the level of parity in college football right now. But what I'm saying is if you get a cheap coach, there won't be parity. The school with the cheap coach will overwhelm everybody else on the talent front that it won't matter. They can just roll the football out, i.e., and I always bring the example, Dave, we just talked about the Miami team in 2001. Larry Krueger rolled the football out, right?
Yeah.
He's like, hey, guys, go win me a championship. He didn't have any leadership. He didn't schmooze boosters. Well, he didn't do anything right. He rolled the football out, and he had the most talented team in the history of football. Go win him a national title.
Yeah, for the record, if you want to go by the gambling community, there are 4 teams that are kind of on a upper tier of, hey, you got a good chance to win a national championship. They're at plus 325, plus 350, plus 375, and Ohio State's plus 450. So going back, the Ducks at plus 325, Bulldogs plus 350, Longhorns plus 375. Then there's a drop-off to Penn State at plus 700. Then there's a drop-off to Notre Dame at plus 1,200. Then there's a drop-off to Tennessee at plus 2,500. I'll still say this. I wouldn't spend the money. I don't think Tennessee's going to win a national championship this year, but I wouldn't be surprised if they got to the game. So I guess you could argue that the plus 2,500 is a good value bet in my mind.
I think it's a great value bet. It's a great, and betting is all about great value bets, guys. So I'm totally with you. Before break, should we roll to stat of the day real quick?
Yeah, it's going to go stat of the day right now, and it's brought to you by our good friends at the Hemp House. Stat of the day is right now. I'll tell you more about the Hemp House here momentarily. What do you got, Caleb?
All right, so on Saturday in Tennessee basketball's thrilling win against Illinois, which, as you know, Dave, I called the most impressive win of the Rick Barnes era.
Good.
Zakai Zeigler came away with 1 steal. That steal pushed him to 200 career steals all time as a Tennessee basketball player, joining Santiago Vescovi and Vincent Yarbrough as the only 3 Vols to have 200 career steals. By the way, Zakai Zeigler is going to break that record. Vescovi has 212 career steals. Yarbrough has 211. Ziegler is going to get past 212 by the end of the year.
Yeah, and honestly, with Vescovi and Yarbrough, wouldn't we agree that those two aren't in Zakai's class as a defender? I mean, they sagged back and picked up a lot of steals and passing lanes, right? Would you agree with that?
Vescovi played the passing lanes. Yarbrough was athletic and had length, so it was easy for him to steal. But I would say that, put it this way, if Yarbrough had Zakai Zeigler's mentality,
oh yeah,
God, him as an NBA player at that point would have been incredible.
The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. John Adams will join us next, brought to you by Neubert Collision Center. Stay tuned. More after this. Again, the show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vol collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
Community banking is about location and much more. It's about family. We reside in your community. We are a part of your community. At Commercial Bank, our commitment extends beyond the walls of our branches. It's displayed each day in the opportunities we provide, the money we give back, and the time we commit, all to help improve the lives of the people, families, and businesses that make our communities great. Commercial Bank, life made better.
Double D Piping provides full-service fire protection on any scale. From residential homes to government facilities, we can assist any customer through design, fabrication, installation, inspection, and demonstration of fire suppression systems. With 30 years of service across 5 states and a full staff with over 40 years experience, our quality can't be beat. Don't get caught watching what you could have prevented. call Double D Piping, the absolute best in fire prevention.
With our brand new location on Emory Road, Eye Care Optical is bringing East Tennessee's best eye care to your neighborhood. Doctors Johnston and Combs offer unmatched expertise and care without a trip to Knoxville. Eye Care Optical, now in Powell.
Are you ready to get strong? At NFC, we offer top-notch weight training and functional fitness, so you can build strength and improve your performance. Join today at nfc1.com or stop by any one of our 7 East Tennessee locations.
When the lights turn on and the game begins, you need a team that gets the job done. It's Ford commercial truck season at Ray Varner Ford in Clinton, where our strong lineup is built for power and performance. Step up your game in this new 24 F-150 4x4 Super Crew, $46,997. It's at 250 Cargo Van, $50,950. 24 Ford Maverick XLT Hybrid, $28,929.
Local you trust, performance you can afford. Ray Varner Ford, built for the game.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks and Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
Who's this guy?
Hello, wizard.
The Dave Hooker Show,
Who?
a presentation of Off the Hook Sports,
What?
YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. Back to Dave Hooker.
It's like the Beatles when this guy comes in. John Adams of the Knoxville News Sentinel, brought to you by Neubert Collision Center. We certainly appreciate Neubert Collision Center. John, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well, Dave. Thank you.
Yeah, I figure to make it applicable to our ages and our sponsor, we could just go total wreck or just fender bender. Total fender bender. How you feeling today?
Total fender bender.
I don't know what that means. All right. Do the Vols have a coaching advantage over Ryan Day? Let's dive into that right now. And I ask you that with the premise that I'm not so sure they need it, but we'll get into the talent discrepancy between the two teams. But do the Vols have a coaching advantage over Ryan Day and these Buckeyes right now?
I don't know. That's kind of a close call, I think. I think Ryan Day has probably one of the best coordinator combos in the country, and Jim Knowles, the defensive coordinator, Chip Kelly's offensive coordinator. I would give the edge to Josh Heupel over Ryan Day, I guess. Ryan Day can't be as bad as people make him out to be. He somehow managed to win 87% of his games. So somebody the other day was comparing him to Butch Jones.
Oh, my gosh.
I mean,
come on.
So I understand why Ohio State fans are upset about Ryan Day. They're not beating their rival. They're not winning championships, national championships. Urban Meyer did both. So you lost that when you lost Urban Meyer. But there have been a lot of other coaches at Ohio State didn't win like Urban Meyer. So I think it's a real interesting matchup because I think of Josh Heupel as Tennessee's offensive coordinator.
Me too.
Don't you, Caleb?
Yeah, I do. I totally do.
Okay, so what do you guys think? Ohio State has a really nice combo. But
I'll offer this. I don't know if we're getting somewhere closer to a suffice take, but if you give me both coaches right now, and I've got an opening for Hooker University, always walk the streets at night, but I've got an opening.
Night classes are open.
Yeah, or classes are always open, if you know
24/7.
That's right. Yeah. So anyway, I will tell you this right now that I would take what I have seen because I think that Ryan Day walked into a pretty golden setup. I would take what I've seen in the past 4 years from Josh Heupel over Ryan Day, and you would have to wrestle me away from a bear to change my mind on that, John.
Well, yeah. I mean, Ryan Day did walk into a great situation. I guess my compliment to Ryan Day, he's not as bad as his worst critics say he is. I'm not trying to throw bouquets his way. Ohio State had no business losing to Michigan. It just didn't. Home field, more talent, better quarterback, you name it. Josh Heupel, on the other hand, took over a horrendous situation. 10 starters transferring under the close watch of the NCAA. You assume NCAA penalties are coming. They turned out to be not too bad because UT imposed its own penalties. But Jeremy Pruitt was running the program into the ground. Nothing profound about that. But, so Josh Heupel flipped it right away. And that first season to me was really significant. To go 7-6 and average almost 40 points a game that year was really significant to me. And now he's built on that with an 11-2 season next year, top 10 finish. And of course, now we're in Tennessee is in the college football playoff. So yeah, I agree. Josh Heupel, if I were hiring a coach for Hooker University, I would take Josh Heupel right now.
Over Ryan Day.
I mean, obviously.
Okay, let me take it a step further. Hold on just a second, Caleb. Or you can go, Caleb, if you'd like to. How many young coaches would you take right now? I think we would all agree that if Kirby Smart calls up any school and says, hey, I would love to coach there. I've got a second cousin who's lived there forever. You would take that phone call, right?
Sure.
But other than that, I mean, who's a lock right now?
Well, if I'm at Hooker University, I'm hiring Hugh Freeze, but that's just
where the burner phones are
a cheap shot.
Where the burner phones are included in tuition.
Well, I mean, the question
it's
is,
even night at daytime at Hooker U.
Right.
Cheap shot. Okay. I could take way more cheap shots at Hugh Freeze if I wanted to. But okay, so let me throw this out, John. And I'll throw this out to you, Dave, too. How much of a coaching of which coach you would take is based on how much credibility they have at the time, not just who's better? And I guess what I mean by that is that, just to give you a quick example, Ryan Day's reminding me of John Cooper right now, at John Cooper's peak at Ohio State. Because John Cooper had about a 4 or 5 year run where he was in the top 10 every year, but he couldn't beat Michigan. And the one year he did beat Michigan, he lost to a really bad Michigan State team that basically saved Nick Saban's job and kept turned Nick Saban into a Hall of Fame coach. If John Cooper doesn't blow that game, Nick Saban, we never hear of him again.
Wow. Wait a minute, Caleb.
Yeah,
my gosh, you just
Michigan
wrote
State was
off
going to
the
fire
greatest
him.
coach of all time.
Yeah, that luggage fell off the rack, and we just didn't even stop to pick it up.
Why don't you go back and trash Bear Bryant next?
Yeah.
Michigan State was going to fire him, and then he saves his job by beating Ohio State. But the reason I'm bringing all that up is how much of it is that if you hired Ryan Day versus Josh Heupel, just the narrative surrounding Josh Heupel would help Josh Heupel recruit more than it would help Ryan Day recruit. Because I felt like, and you guys remember those Ohio State teams, they fell apart really bad at the end of John Cooper's tenure. Wasn't that because of the narrative of him constantly being a choke artist? He ended up not being able to recruit because that thing just stuck out there for him wherever he went.
John, if you were to pick a word to describe John Cooper's coaching style, the former Powell High alum, went to 3 years of PMS, Powell Middle School, before 4 years to get his PhD, Powell High diploma, Powell Middle School, respectively speaking. Go ahead, John. One word to describe John Cooper's coaching career. Esteemed.
Successful.
That's it?
He's in the Hall of Fame, isn't he?
I don't know.
I mean, he had some great success at Tulsa.
Well, I mean, you think Ohio State, because of its name, they're just not going to just hand it a national championship trophy.
Yeah, but John, Ohio State, to me, and here's my issue. There are 3 schools that are on this tier, and only 3. Now, NIL's changed things, and I'll concede that they've changed. But pre-NIL, there were 3 schools where you could wake up and get top 5 classes in your backyard because you're loaded with talent and you don't have any competition for that talent. And that was Ohio State, Georgia, and LSU. Hence the reason LSU won national championships with Les Miles and Ed Orgeron as head coach. So I do think isn't it really a red flag that you lose 4 years in a row to Michigan, that I'm sorry, no matter how much they try, they can't recruit on the level of Ohio State. They can't, and they shouldn't be able to.
Is it tantamount? Let me ask you this, John. Is it tantamount in 1997 when Tennessee lost to Florida and all signs pointed to Tennessee's never, ever, ever going to beat Florida? They couldn't do it with a senior quarterback that should have won the Heisman Trophy, for goodness sake.
Yeah, it was very similar. I think you could make a nice comparison there with what was going on with Tennessee. I mean, Tennessee almost missed its opportunity. It came extraordinarily close to not getting a championship. The 98 season had a lot of close games, and it could have faltered along the way. It didn't. It won a national title. But point being, and if you look at Ohio State and you look at Ryan Day, it went just the other way for him in 2022 because he lost to a great Georgia team, and he lost in the most difficult of ways, a last-second field goal. Ohio State looked to be the better team for most of that game. So if he wins that game, I don't think anybody doubts Ohio State would have won the championship game. So he's been really close. It's not as though he's never come that close. So, I mean, that was a tremendous Ohio State team.
It's funny, too, how we could talk about how Kirby Smart's made Georgia a much better program than when he took over. And I do think it was about the War Daddies, the Big Uglies, whatever you want to call them, that play up front. And I obviously think that was key. But I think you have to give, whether it's Bobo there or whatever the case may be.
You don't have to give Bobo anything.
Yeah, he's not going to give Bobo anything. I think you have to give the offensive staff, what they've done coming down the stretch, a lot of credit there. I mean, it's funny. He doesn't look like he would, just like Saban didn't look like he would be the head of some innovative offense. And I'm not saying he is, but I think that they adapted. I'm not big on Carson Beck, but they adapted to his style really well.
Yeah, and I do give Bobo a lot of credit. He coached circles around Tennessee in that matchup in November. He did a tremendous job in the second half. Once he lost his starting quarterback, he had to make a quick turnaround game plan. And Georgia's offense kicked it in gear and beat Texas. So as for Kirby Smart, he's been even better than I thought he would be. To me, he just keeps getting better. I always thought he was one of the best motivators, maybe now the best motivator in college football, and maybe the best game manager. There are not that many good game managers among coaches. He's one of them. I really like Kirby.
Show.
Yeah, well, good point. That was a plug for a future segment. So when you look at what Kirby Smart does, when you're going to predict a game, thinking, okay, are you going to bet on it? And you're trying to figure out who's going to win. You're playing with the point spread and all that stuff. Do you that often think about who the coach is? I really don't. But with Georgia, I do. With Georgia, I do.
Yeah, I could see.
There's probably a dozen that have a polarizing characteristic.
So how about this? Both Ohio State and Tennessee have offensive-minded coaches that are kind of cutting edge. Getting to that point, John, who would you trust situationally to not make our football IQ segment if it came to that? Josh Heupel or Ryan Day?
Well, I would not trust. There's too many times, and you've been too nice about it, Caleb, that Tennessee's gone to halftime or they've gone to postgame with a timeout in their pocket that they could have used. I don't think it's Tennessee. Their analytics guy needs to say, call a timeout every once in a while.
Well, I mean, Josh Heupel's made your coaching segment, your no geniuses among us segment. And Ryan Day, I don't remember if he's been in your segment or not. I'm trying to think of.
He actually hasn't. Now that I say it out loud.
I mean, but see, I think of this as I I think of Ryan Day as more like Philip Fulmer in being more of a CEO type. I mean, he excuse me, he didn't hire Chip Kelly to come in there and to run his system and be a foreman. He hired him to come in and run the offense.
Okay.
You don't hire a guy like that unless you give him that kind of independence in making decision-making with the offense.
There seems to be this mixture of Philip Fulmers that's going on. Philip Fulmer, when he went out and hired David Cutcliffe to replace Randy Sanders, that's when he said after a press conference, I want to be the CEO type. And I thought, well, that's not great to say, but nobody quoted him on it, so we moved on. But the Philip Fulmer, correct me if I'm wrong, it's slightly before my time, John, that was the head coach of the Vols in mid-90s, was a driven offensive coach who was determined to be a great recruiter. I think just to say that, oh, he's just one of these guys who just kind of took over and, got lucky. Those were two different Philip Fulmers. I think Philip Fulmer was very much in the trenches first time around.
Well, yeah, he was in the trenches, and just when he was an AD and he returned to the trenches working with that O-line, that was his forte, was coaching the offensive line. I thought he was a terrific offensive line coach. I didn't think he was much as an offensive coordinator. In the brief time he was offensive coordinator, I thought his offense is underachieved, had a lot of talent. Yeah, and then he was an accomplished recruiter, and his whole staff recruited well. When Tennessee was rolling there in the 1990s, it wasn't just Fulmer, but yeah, he was recognized as one of the top recruiters, but didn't always do as much with that talent. So I think you can make some. He didn't win as high a percentage of his games as Ryan Day has, but you could make some comparisons there. I don't know.
No, I definitely.
What was Ryan Day's of expertise, or did he have one?
He was the offensive coordinator beforehand.
I know, but was he like a quarterbacks coach? Do you know?
Oh, what did he specialize on?
He was the. Yeah,
I believe he was the quarterback coach.
Philip Fulmer. Okay. Well,
yeah,
Philip
he was the quarterback coach.
Was recognized as one of the best O-line country. He could have been an NFL offensive line coach.
Yep, no doubt about it. Click like and subscribe. We greatly appreciate that. Now, as far as the coaches that will actually take the field, Ryan Day's staff versus Josh Heupel's staff, who do you give the advantage to, John?
I'm sorry, what? Say that again. What?
The two coaching staffs that'll be on the field on Saturday, Ohio State and Tennessee. Whose staff, as far as from a coaching perspective, X's and O's, not Jimmy's and Joe's, do you give the advantage when Tennessee plays at Ohio State?
I don't know the makeup of Ohio State's staff when you start breaking it down by position coaches. I think Tennessee, obviously, in the defensive line doesn't, Rodney Garner is as good as there is. He's also a great recruiter. So I would give their recruit the edge to Tennessee. Coordinator-wise, and even if you count Josh Heupel as offensive coordinator, I might give it to Ohio State because I know Tim Banks has had a really good year too, had a bad day against Georgia. Jim Knowles is considered one of the best defensive coordinators in the country.
You act like you're surprised. I mean, when you have Chip Kelly on the staff, you have to give a big-time bonus compared to Joey Halsley, who hasn't done anything at Tennessee yet, or in college for that matter.
Well, I know, but I'm thinking of Josh Heupel as the offensive coordinator.
But just in terms of having another brain in the room.
Okay. Yeah, I would give the edge to Ohio State, but I can't say that across the board of what their staff is.
So, I think the overall staff favors Tennessee. I still am high on Tim Banks. I know what happened with Georgia. John, I'm just going to say I think Georgia that day, because their backs were against the wall, I think they threw the kitchen sink playbook in that game, and I don't think Tennessee responded with the kitchen sink playbook because I think they could afford a loss. Georgia couldn't. I've kind of maintained that's what I felt happened on that day.
Well,
So
but
basically,
how can you? I mean, this was the biggest game of the year for Tennessee. It was the
But
biggest game of
Tennessee's
the
not
year.
eliminated
You better
from
be throwing everything
Tennessee's.
you got at Georgia, and you
Tennessee's
decide not to blitz.
Tennessee's backs were not against the wall that day, though. They were going to the play. They were going to the playoff if they lost.
Hey,
Whereas
no big
Georgia
deal.
was going to be eliminated if they lost.
Go down to Athens.
I'm just
sleepwalk through it.
I warned you guys this was going to be the result of an expanded playoff. I'm the one who said there should be no expanded playoff. Teams were going to think long term about the playoff and let a few things slide in certain games and not throw kitchen sinks at time. I'm just going to say that. That's just my call. Y'all wanted the expanded playoff. You got it. Now teams are devaluing the regular season. I think Michigan threw the kitchen sink at Ohio State, and Ohio State didn't really throw the kitchen sink back because they knew they were going to the playoff.
Yep.
I do.
Got teams throwing games left and right.
Well, I do think Penn State did throw that Big Ten title game. And just like in basketball, John, you and I both know Rick Barnes threw that SEC tournament game last year. He didn't care to win it.
I don't know that, Caleb. I don't know that.
I know it.
I mean, you do know it.
You're getting inside people's heads.
I am. I am a great
idea that Tennessee went into that Georgia game thinking, well, it's just a regular season game. It's not that big a deal. We want to save some of the stuff for the playoffs, or maybe for Vanderbilt when we try to win the state championship. But we're not going to live and die on this game. No, I don't get that at all.
Yeah.
So you're thinking that's why
I'm trying to figure out Coach Caleb. Coach Caleb, it's like his last game, and he's coaching up this middle school team. So young Quincy is 13. He's getting ready to go to high school. That's where the big boys play, so you won't be able to influence any decisions. And Caleb comes to him and says, young Quincy, I got an idea for you. It's gonna cause you to have to leave this game early. I've signed an endorsement deal with a company that makes crutches. You're going to have to give up football, but we're going to go ahead and sign this deal and make a little bit of cash. That, to me, is the type of advice that Caleb might give. John, does that make sense?
None at all.
Not at all. All right. Whatever. We're not going to – I got to move on real quick because I wanted to ask John this. I wanted to move on to this topic in particular. Sticking with coaching, though, obviously Ryan Day has a lot of pressure on him in this game. Do you think – that's going to help Ohio State or hurt Ohio State playing with their backs against the wall?
I think it could go either way. But I really think we see it in sports all the time. When teams are getting heavily criticized, you know what they do? They rally the troops. They circle the wagons. You can come up with a few more cliches as to what they do. But it happens all the time. It's us against the world mentality. This is what Ohio State feels right now. Nobody believes in you because you lost to Michigan. You're a bunch of bums. Your coach should be fired. You guys are no good. We spent all this money on you and you've underachieved. You ought to be giving us money back. I mean, please. And so that's all they're hearing. And that usually brings out the best in teams.
I know.
And I think the only way it would work if things go poorly at the start and the crowd turns on Ohio State, that's not out of the realm of possibility. It could work against Ohio State. But going into the game, I think it's a positive motivating force.
But could it be like, I'm going to go because Dave's such a fan. Do you remember Chan Gailey's last year as head coach of the Cowboys, where the Cowboys backed into the playoffs at 8-8, and then they got draxed by Minnesota? I mean, humiliated. And then, of course, Jerry Jones fires Chan Gailey and is like, I want Dave Campo as my head coach. One of the smartest people to ever coach football. I'm kidding.
Chan Gailey, right up there with best coaching decisions with Dave Clawson, who retired, by the way. I'm going to flip-flop my offensive line to no cursing at an NFL practice. Really?
But I'm saying, could it be? We've seen teams. I'll go to basketball. Just to go to basketball. What about this, John? Remember when Mike Hamilton said on a radio show that if Bruce Pearl doesn't make the Sweet 16, he's fired? And that's when Tennessee got blown out by Michigan, Tobias Harris's last year. So it can work the other way a lot of times, can it? Where just the negative noise just has you wilt and collapse beneath the pressure and get blown out.
Yeah, but I just think in this Ohio State case, you've got a bunch of elite athletes. I don't think anybody doubts that Ohio State has some talent. I just think it's really going to motivate these guys because they're not used to failing. They're not used to losing. And here they're taking all this heat because they lost one game. And I think it's really going to inspire this team.
Yeah. And you know who it really inspires most oftentimes are what those players coach types. And I think we would all agree that Ryan Day is that type. You know, he's not the standoffish corner of the room Larry Coker guy. I get the feeling that they'll want to rally for him. I hate it when analysts say this, but I think the beginning of the game is incredibly important, John. Not that anybody says, boy, let's just go out there and stink it up for the first 8 minutes and see what happens. You know, I hate it when people say that, but I do think some bad mojo could be happening on Ohio State sideline.
Yeah, it's like saying, the opening minutes of surgery are really important.
Right.
Yeah. It's like,
the other one I love is
slice that artery.
Yeah.
Hard to bounce back from that.
The other one I love is other than turnovers and performance in the red zone, we just fell short. Well, Lordy Mighty. I mean, that's like, you know, climbing
John,
Mount Everest without arms or legs.
But to bolster Dave's point, John, because Kirk Herbstreit even suggested this. I mean, we know the fans have we know fans in Ohio are very, very upset with Ryan Day right now. And Herbstreit suggested that if things go wrong early, that the fans will start booing. Do you see that as a possibility? Ohio State fans in the middle of a playoff game that could still go either way will just start booing Ryan Day if things go wrong in the first 5-6 minutes of the game?
Not that soon. I think if Ohio State got down 14-0, I think some fans would boo. Or they might boo a decision during the course of the game. But fans do that even when they like their coaches. So I thought that was over the top with what Kirk Herbstreit said. He said they'd be better off maybe playing on the road. Give me a break. Are you kidding me? Come on. Come on down and,
He might as well have sent them all a personal letter saying, you need to give it your all for Ohio State. That's what he was doing.
I know. It was just absurd. I don't know what was going on in his head. But, come on down to Neyland Stadium. Oh, man, this certainly helps us. Gosh, I can't hear anything in the huddle on the sidelines or in the locker room. No, this will be great. Everybody's against us.
I feel like I need a hazmat suit to use the restroom. Have you ever been in the away locker rooms? Nasty.
Well, I'm just going to say, it was a little bit extra, but y'all keep talking about this rallying for coaches. Tennessee really rallied for Butch Jones when Georgia came to town after Butch Jones lashed out at the media that week.
That does not compare. You picked a guy that was hated with great disdain by his own players.
They just abhorred him. I mean,
I get it. I'm just saying, Jerry Green. Yeah, they really rallied for Jerry Green in 2001.
Yeah, but those are horrible examples, though, Caleb. I think Ryan Day. I've never heard that he's not a popular.
They completely rallied around Jerry Green. What was his last game? Was that the game he coached against Georgetown in the NIT?
Charlotte.
It was Charlotte when Tony Harris put up the last shot, and I really thought it was going to knock down the backboard.
Yeah, I know. I remember that.
He missed it by like 20 feet.
Yeah.
And I had to go. That was an afternoon game, wasn't it?
Yeah, they should have just played it early morning, got it over with.
Did Jerry Green make happy hour afterward?
God, Caleb, you're just brutal with people. You attacked him personally.
Yeah, you just had the bus pull over in the middle of the drive to the airport.
Hugh Freeze has turned his life around, and you're still nailing him for something that happened years ago.
Nailing him for his nailing. Okay, sorry. But yeah, John, I'm not just nailing him for the Ole Miss thing. I'm nailing him.
Great.
I was in
There
high
it
school
goes
in
for
Memphis when
possible
he was
lawsuit range.
Here we go. Here we go into the
I'm not
weeds.
going to say read AL.com and what he was allegedly doing when he was a high school coach. And
Allegedly.
I know
Allegedly,
a couple people that went to Briarcrest during that time. It was it was sketchy.
How well? Okay. No, let's don't stop. How well did you know him, Caleb?
Yeah. What message board did you see?
This isn't a message board. There are actual accusations against him on this.
Did you talk to these people?
Stop, John. Hang tight with Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. John's appearance brought to you by Neubert Collision Center. Stay tuned. More after this. Again, the show represented by Banks & Jones, banksandjones.com.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Neubert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Neubert Collision Center.
24 F-150 4x4 Super Crew, $46,997. 24 Ford Transit 250 cargo van, $50,950. 24 Ford Maverick XLT Hybrid, $28,929. Local you trust, power you can afford.
Having been in the jewelry industry for a long time in the Knoxville community, I saw a need for a jeweler, a real jeweler.
Our ability to do these designs has really been based on the customers bringing new things in and challenging us as a store. Our goal is not to tell anybody what they want. Our goal is to listen to what they want and then help them get there.
Schedule your consultation today to get your special someone the perfect custom gift just in time for the holidays.
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air. Dare to compare.
With our brand new location on Emory Road, Eye Care Optical is bringing East Tennessee's best eye care to your neighborhood. Doctors Johnston and Combs offer unmatched expertise and care without a trip to Knoxville. Eye Care Optical, now in Powell.
Double D Piping provides full-service fire protection on any scale. From residential homes to government facilities, we can assist any customer through design, fabrication, installation, inspection, and demonstration of fire suppression systems. With 30 years of service across 5 states and a full staff with over 40 years experience, our quality can't be beaten. Don't get caught watching what you could have prevented. Call Double D Piping, the absolute best in fire prevention.
Cooper Mays here. Second down.
It is second down, Coop. I have no idea why I had you say that, as I pressed the wrong button. John Adams joins us now, brought to you by our good friends at Neubert Collision Center.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win, banksjones.com.
Who's this guy?
Hello, wizard.
The Dave Hooker Show,
Who?
a presentation of Off the Hook Sports,
What?
YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. Back to Dave Hooker.
When's all said and done, John, have we overdone the Ryan Day thing that we discussed a bit earlier? I mean, is that really going to have a big effect on the players that are not only trying to improve their draft stock, but theoretically would want to play for some mythical championship that's out there that some committee has put together on a week-by-week basis to provide a television show to ESPN? Theoretically.
Theoretically, I just think the Ryan Day thing is a huge factor.
Oh, you do think it's okay?
Yeah, I really do.
Do you, Caleb? Because I think I kind of thought we were doing bit radio for a second. I don't think ultimately that has a huge effect on this game and how.
Well, John, do you think it's a huge factor and a positive for Ryan Day, though, right?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
It wouldn't be for Butch Jones since we brought him up for comparative purposes. But I think
before we get to our next one, what about this one then? I think a more comparative purpose because you compared him to Philip Fulmer. There were plenty of times where there were articles after articles about Philip Fulmer losing control of the team. Sometimes they responded well, sometimes they didn't. The one I remember where they responded, well, y'all both covered, was a 2007 Georgia game where a lot of players signed like that letter or whatever supporting Philip Fulmer, and he got mad at some writer for quoting I forget who, and it wasn't John and it wasn't Dave, but for quoting anonymous sources talking about how he had lost control of the program. He called it a cheap shot. Tennessee went out and blew out Georgia. So they rallied for him that day, but then like the next year, 2008, I don't remember them rallying for Philip Fulmer in any big game that year when his job was sliding away.
John, I guess this would go back to the Ryan Day thing. I think you have to take with a grain of salt what you get leading up to these games. And everybody wants to predict and tell you that Nico is going to throw 5 touchdowns or 3 interceptions. But at the end of the day, these are just 2 very good football teams. And probably there will be about 5 or 6 plays that determine who wins this football game.
Okay, and the team that makes the fewest turnovers.
Yeah, well, I don't want to
come out on top.
I don't want to go down that. Gets off to the best start and best red zone offense, best red zone defense too. No, I'm not including everything. I just think this is when you're on the big boy stage. So if you have something special you want to pull out, Josh Heupel, go for it. This is a time that I think you need to look at this where the talent differential is not significant. We could debate how significant, if at all. But you have a chance to go out there and shoot your shot. This is what you have fought for so long for, is this ability to go out there and shoot your shot at one good, clean shot, John. And this can easily define a program. It gets the naysayers wondering about Ryan Day. It gets other people more confident in a program, like when you beat Alabama in 2022. So, I mean, this can definitely determine the branch that this program goes under Josh Heupel.
Yeah, well, as far as the motivational thing with Ryan Day, it's not just about Ryan Day with the players. I just think it's the fact that the whole program is being scrutinized in an unfavorable way because of a loss to Michigan. And so to me, that's kind of the overriding factor. I've just seen that so many times in sports. I mean, coaches can have the number 1 team in the country from the start of the season to the very last, and you'll still hear players talking about, we don't get any respect. Why? You're number 1. People voted you. No, we don't. They love that. They look for reasons to say we don't get any respect, and so now Ohio State has gotten disrespected, as the players like to say. Very much so after the Michigan loss. I just think that is a big plus for Ohio State going into the game. And once the game starts, you think, all bets are off once you take that first hit. You're in the middle of the game. But I think leading up to the game, in terms of preparation, in terms of being focused, and I do think it gives you a little bit extra even in the game.
Let's turn to a quarterback comparison for a second. Tennessee seems to be trending in the right direction with Nico Iamaleava. Seems like to be the exact opposite in Columbus, John, where Will Howard has recently struggled against Michigan. He's about a 57% completion percentage. I know you can get away with a lower completion percentage in the Big Ten, but in the SEC. But this to me is troubling. I don't think Will Howard's very good. Maybe the difference in the 2 programs and where they stand right now is play at quarterback.
Well, I think Will Howard is a better than average college quarterback. I don't think he's an elite quarterback. I don't think he's the quarterback you think can lead you to a national championship. And I think that's where Ohio State will come. Forget the Tennessee game. This is just one game in the path to a national title. I'm not sure if Will Howard has what it takes to get it there. But you could say that about some of these other quarterbacks in the playoff, too. He's not the only one. There's some negatives going along with other quarterbacks in the playoffs. This is the most intriguing aspect of the game to me, is what will Nico do? I'm just not sure. I thought he played his best game against Vanderbilt. And that's significant because this wasn't a typical Vanderbilt team. It was a 500 team, but a team that played very well against a lot of good teams. So I give Nico a lot of credit for that. I think his confidence is at a high level now, and I think that's a big factor. It's so much different than it was, say, after the Oklahoma game in Norman. I think Tennessee's offensive line is playing better than it was at parts of the season. So I think the key is, can Nico make the big plays? Now, that's not just on him. He needs help in that regard. He needs a receiver to make a play too. But can Nico make some big plays? I still think he has more potential to me to make a big play than Will Howard does.
Yep, I would agree with that. I want to spin this on Caleb. I do remind everybody that this is Last Look, brought to you by Doctors Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn. Caleb will have the follow to that. Look at me, no contacts, no glasses. Thanks to Doctors Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn.
The first step to better vision is to visit ccteyes.com. The information you need is easy to access, and setting an appointment is as simple as clicking the tab. Doctors Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn, and Eye Care Optical at ccteyes.com.
All right, Caleb, what do you got?
All right, so John, speaking of that, and I agree that Nico played his best game against Vanderbilt. I'm still hazy on whether or not he was just peaking at the right time, or Tennessee, while having improved, did just get a good break with two very easy teams to close out the year. Because I get what you say about Vanderbilt, but they were banged up in that game. What do you make of the fact, though, that Will Howard, I get the Michigan game, but in Ohio State's 3 games against ranked teams, Oregon, Penn State, Indiana, all playoff teams, 2 of them he did complete over 80% of his passes. And it wasn't, I mean, that Oregon loss wasn't really his fault, was it? He played really well in that Oregon game.
No, he did. He did. I think, though, of those defenses, Tennessee's defensive front, they have a great track record, Georgia game aside, of really handling quarterbacks and making life miserable for quarterbacks. I think Will Howard's going to want to run more in this game. And you pay a quarterback pays a big price when he runs against Tennessee. Tennessee, to me, is one of the hardest hitting teams I've seen this year.
Yep.
And you can look at all the quarterbacks that have fallen by the wayside, quarterbacks who couldn't finish what they started when playing Tennessee. So I'm not as down on Will Howard as Dave is. I think he's
here's what I think of Ohio State. I think they've got a little run, kind of like Tennessee did, of elite receiver play. And I'm talking about Tennessee back in the 80s and 90s, a little bit before my time. But I think it makes their quarterback look a lot better. No offense, Andy Kelly. But I think that right now you've got a situation in Ohio State there where you've had a couple of – I just don't think Will Howard's – I think I've got him about like you. I mean, you said you had him, what,
pretty good college quarterback. Yeah. He's
25-30 in the nation?
Huh?
25-30 in the nation?
Top 40.
Top 40 in the nation, Caleb?
Yeah.
Can we settle on top 40 in the nation?
Will Howard?
Yes.
Will Howard?
Yes.
Are
you paying attention?
I'd go top 40. I'd go top 40. Why would I not be paying attention?
I don't know. Just checking on you.
Well, everybody zones out every now and then, Dave. So don't be critical of Caleb.
Well,
don't tell me that. Tell Caleb.
See, here's the thing, though. It's not like Ohio State. We agree their receiving core is nowhere near what it was a couple of years ago or even last year, right? It's a significant drop off from what they had last year when they had Marvin Harrison Jr. and all those guys that all went to the NFL.
Well, yeah, but I think they've got guys now that still gain separation and they're still really, really good.
Yeah. Well, they're good. Yeah. The freshman's great.
Yeah. So I just putting all this together, I'd have to say that Will Howard, I still say Ohio State has the quarterback advantage as of right now because I haven't really seen Nico do anything impressive against a good team. Now, he did have a good second half against Alabama. I thought Alabama played a very simple coverage against Nico in the second half of that game. They played one-on-one tight men on the outside, and Nico just threw it over the top and had Dante Thornton a few times. It kind of reminded me of, you guys remember that playoff game where Tim Tebow had 300 yards against the Steelers, and everybody's like, oh, that was so great. It's like, yeah, but the Steelers just played like tight man coverage and had no safety the whole game. So it was bunch of easy throws for him to make. I thought that's what Alabama did to Nico, but in the second half. But
I could just shut down the camera and get going with you two and Tim Tebow. John's a big Tim Tebow guy. You guys will just roll. You guys can take care.
Yeah, I mean,
I thought he was a great
Caleb, go ahead and trash somebody else. Go ahead.
No, I thought he was a great college quarterback, and I thought if today's offenses were being used that are running the NFL were used now, he'd actually be pretty good. But at that time, he wasn't going to be a fit for a pro style offense the way they tried to make him in Denver. But I guess the point I'm saying is with Nico, I still haven't seen him do anything significant against a good team. Whereas I have seen Will Howard play well against one team I know to be good in Oregon and one team that's at least good enough to make the college football playoff in Indiana, whatever you think about them during that time.
What's Nico's best win from a quarterback standpoint?
His best game or his best win?
Best win.
Well, Alabama. But I don't think he was that impressive against Alabama. Do y'all? Did y'all think he was that impressive?
That's what I'm asking. From a quarterback.
Who was better in that? Excuse me, Dave. Who was better in that game? Jalen Milroe or Nico Yamalea?
That's not saying much. I think Jalen Milroe, I said from the start of the year, he was not a fit for Kalen DeBoer's offense. And I mean, he may not be a fit for any offense anyway, but Nico was better. But that was more like Jalen Milroe was significantly worse.
But Caleb, he's had a really good career overall.
Yeah, but he was horrible against Tennessee. You act like Jalen Milroe played great against Tennessee. He was horrible. I didn't
think who was better in that game. The
Nico
defense...
by default.
Okay, well,
who was better, Nico against Alabama or Will Howard against Oregon?
Will Howard against Oregon. Okay, look at it this way. Would you, if you were a quarterback, would you rather go against Tennessee's defense or Ohio State's defense?
Okay, I think that's a very interesting one.
Because that's actually that's a good talking point because that's a good transition. But I'll just close it out first with I would think I would rather go against Ohio State's defense if I'm a quarterback, and I'll give you that.
You know what I would do, John? I would probably throw this game to help my seeding in the next round.
You can't do that in the playoff, guys.
Oh, is that what?
Okay, so to transition though, it's funny we bring that up because, John, I want to ask you this question. I had you on a couple of weeks ago and we talked and we kind of questioned Tennessee's cornerback play because they're like, have they played any great quarterbacks all year? What if we expand that a little bit? Everybody's talking about Tennessee's defensive line and how it could give Ohio State trouble. But the one time they played a team this level of talent, this caliber, on the offensive line was Georgia, and the defensive line got no pressure all game. So are we sure the defensive line will be able to get the same level of pressure on Ohio State? Or have they just been cashing in on some really mediocre offenses this year who they played?
Well, I think that's a fair point. I think, though, the difference is Georgia's offensive line. Georgia got guys back from injury for that game. They were better in that game against Tennessee than they had been. I think Georgia has a good offensive line. You saw it able to run the ball against a good Texas front in the second half of the SEC championship game. Ohio State losing its center, Seth McLaughlin, was a strong All-American candidate and lost him before the Michigan game. I thought that was I think that's a big factor in this game. It also lost its starting left tackle, Josh Simmons. It's lost two key offensive linemen. And I know Ohio State has a lot of talent, and I'm sure it's not bringing in some stiff to fill that position, but it's still not at its best. And I think Georgia's offensive line, when it played Tennessee, was in much better shape than Ohio State's is. I think Tennessee defensive front is going to outplay Ohio State's offensive line. And if it doesn't, then Tennessee has no chance. You can forget about it. It's going to lose by 2 touchdowns.
It's crazy to think that this defensive line could be the reason that Tennessee gets their first playoff win, or it could be the biggest bill of goods ever sold to a Tennessee fan base in the history of man. When you look at what they actually have been described as, I'm not talking about spring practice where Kirsten Biggers has 200 yards against the scout team defense. I'm talking about they've actually done things during the season, but the schedule has been so bad, we're not 100% sure how great it is. So you could have this upcoming game, Tennessee's defensive line could define it one of two ways. They could be incredibly overrated, or they could define it as they go out there and win the football game, John.
Yeah, well, it has played. You go back, kind of its coming out party, because the first 3 games, everybody knew those were just overmatched teams. I don't. NC State was overrated and overmatched. Oklahoma, that was the game where Tennessee's defensive front looked so dominant when it's bringing in its 10th and 11th defensive linemen, and they're making plays in the Oklahoma backfield. But we know that Oklahoma team its offense was bad all year, and it was at its absolute worst for that game because of injuries and so forth. Didn't know what to do with its quarterbacks, and that's a story for another day. But we look at, when you go through Tennessee's schedule, who would you say who had the most dynamic offense of all of Tennessee's opponents? Who would you say?
I mean, I would have to say it was Georgia. But
yeah, you'd have to.
Yeah, but do you really think of that as a dynamic offense?
No, John, but
I
it's
would
funny.
say like a solid offense.
Yeah, I would have looked preseason as who's going to carry the banner for electric offense in the SEC. You would have said Tennessee, Ole Miss, and then Ole Miss.
Even with Jefferson.
What?
Ole Miss, Texas, LSU.
Yeah, they all kind of slipped short, in my opinion.
Well, Ole Miss put up a lot of yards. Tennessee didn't play the best offensive teams in the SEC.
Agreed.
No, I mean, statistically, and again, this is just statistically speaking, Alabama's offense was pretty good, but you're right. When they faced Tennessee and Oklahoma, they got, I hate to use the word exposed because everybody says that when someone gets beat, but that was a classic case of getting exposed. It's, if you have a good defensive front and you run stunts and twists, Jalen Milroe is completely lost in the pocket and doesn't know what to do.
But the other factor, when you look at it from the other side, if you watch Tennessee's defensive front, it looks really good. I mean, you've got a bunch of 300-pound guys who can who can move and who can make some plays downfield. I mean, that's what got my attention with this defensive front. And James Pierce is a high draft pick. Mm-hmm. And he's not. Joshua Joseph's a really good pass rusher. Amari Thomas, these are proven guys. So I don't think, even though Tennessee hasn't faced a really dynamic, it hadn't faced Oregon with a lot of weapons and a really polished quarterback in Dylan Gabriel. It hasn't faced that kind of team, but if it played Texas, say Texas has offensive talent, good offensive line, I still take Tennessee. I would bet on Tennessee's defense against Texas.
So, John, do you think, because I know you've been critical of Tennessee not blitzing against Georgia, and I understand that. I thought they should have blitzed more. Do you think they'll have to blitz some against Ohio State, or do you think they'll be able to just win this game with their front four?
Oh, I think they need to blitz. I don't think it's like I have to. I think you should want to blitz, because I think if your defensive front can pressure a quarterback some, well, you mix it up. I just think the main thing you don't want to get predictable against good teams. Never get predictable. So I would mix in blitzes. If an offensive line is having trouble blocking a front four, then I want to bring even more pressure sometimes, because it's like then they feel overwhelmed. They're already struggling to beat the front four to keep it away from its quarterback, and now you're bringing more guys. I think that works. I think Tennessee really needs to mix it up, but I do believe it's going to blitz. It's got to. It can't. I mean, the Georgia defensive game plan made no sense to me.
Raise your hand if you're about to sound like an old fuddy-duddy. Tennessee does have to do things and still be sound defensively, John. And I don't think they have to take chances like they used to. Frankly, I think they'll win more battles in one-on-one talent matchups than they would have 2 years ago. So why take the risk? The odds are in your favor.
Yeah, because it's like when one thing is offensively, if something is really working for you, if the other team can't stop the run and it's doing everything it can and still struggling to stop the run, and you catch it being so run conscious and throw on it, you can get big plays. I think Tennessee can make big plays defensively by blitzing. I just wouldn't sit pat. I stand pat with it and say, okay, our front four is really good. We can contain Ohio State with this. But Tennessee has a really good cornerback to match up against Ohio State's best receiver. So, yeah, I think in these kind of games, you have to take chances. You have to be aggressive.
Okay, now I'm going to play the other side of this beforehand so that people can roll it back, keep your receipts. If it's after the game, then I'm wrong. But the one thing you don't want to walk away when we talk about this defensive front, you don't want to walk away and say at midnight in Columbus is, let Jeremiah Thielander beat us. That's the one thing you don't want to say, because I think he's been a significant dip in the production of the middle linebacker position since Keenan Pili went out in the Florida game. And if you're talking about putting more pressure on each individual in the defensive front, John, you could be putting him in a greater risk reward role. That scares me.
Okay, well that's fair, but I think there's some rewards to be had here. I just feel like when an offensive line and an offense feels it's under siege and it's really having a hard time dealing with that front group, and then you mix in blitzes, I just think it gets overwhelmed, and I think there's it really impacts morale in your psyche when you just feel like we can't handle this. And go back, I know it was Oklahoma had a bad offense, but that's how Oklahoma looked. Tennessee blitzed some in that game, and it was effective too because Oklahoma just felt overwhelmed. And so, yeah, I would be willing to take that risk. So you sit there, Dave, and you just stand pat. And, when you walk away from the game, well, I was true to my philosophy.
Yeah,
you live with that until next season.
Pretty good about it. That analyst want to take him out for a big steak. We can celebrate a loss as long as we use analytics.
Well, just so you guys know, a bit of a history lesson here.
Here we go.
Last time Tennessee had a defensive front this great, they were also playing for a chance to go to the Rose Bowl. And that would have been 2001. And of course, on the way to go to the Rose Bowl, the starting quarterback for their opponent got hurt, and they apparently had not prepared for the quarterback draw with the best interior defensive line in history.
Ever.
And let Matt Mock beat them, running it up, just taking the snap and running it up the middle.
I still remember that's the only SEC championship game that I've been to where they did this. They go, just want to let everybody know at halftime there, Rohan Davey is out, quarterback LSU, and yeah, we were on a plane, by the way. And then he said, who was it LeBrandon Tofield? Who was the running back?
Yep.
The running back was out, and I forgot the guy that came in for him, Dominic Davis. Yeah, he played really well too.
Yeah, they both look like clones of the previous dude, but it's my fault because I'm the one that booked the trip to the Rose Bowl.
How inexplicable is that loss, though? How do you? They had John Henderson and Howard Hainsworth and let Matt Mock run on them.
Well, here's the thing: it was as though you're playing on a sandlot. Does anybody ever play on a sandlot anymore? Is there even any such thing as let's go to the sandlot field? And everybody goes, what? The sandlot? Okay. But it was as though they thought Matt Mock could not cross the line of scrimmage. He had to stay back behind the line. He wasn't eligible to advance the ball beyond the line of scrimmage.
John's getting so excited about this game. He's knocking his microphone around.
Well, this microphone is very flexible and very mobile, so that's sometimes helpful, sometimes not. So, yeah, it was just that was all LSU had.
That was all they had. He did not throw the ball well that day.
No. And Tennessee just stood back and watched it happen. Yeah, that was one of the toughest games, I think, to figure of Tennessee's, of its worst moments and of its really bad games. And you think, well, the South Carolina game to me tops them all in 22, but that 2001 SEC championship game, Tennessee. So why are we talking about that, by the way? How do we get
because
into
we're talking
that?
about defensive. We're talking about defensive fronts, elite defensive fronts for Tennessee playing in a game with a chance to go to the Rose Bowl. Because if they win this game, they'll go to the Rose Bowl.
There you go.
I mean,
Yeah.
He's John Adams. I'm Dave Hooker. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. John's appearance brought to you by Neubert Collision Center. We'll see you each and every weekday at 10 a.m. on the YouTube. Wherever you listen, be sure and like and subscribe. And also leave us a review. The show brought to you by Off the Hook Sports, offthehooksports.com.